Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Becoming Unbound, the podcast where we break free from the boxes society puts us in and explore what it really means to live a life of freedom. Whether it's breaking out of the 9 to 5, leaving a toxic relationship, ditching old mindsets, and rewriting the rules around money, we're here for it all. This is where we tell real stories of people unbinding themselves and redefining what freedom looks like. Today's guest is Montana Skurka, a therapeutic yoga and meditation teacher, Reiki practitioner, and a wellness coach who specializes in nervous system regulation and mind-body healing. With a Master of Teaching from the University of Toronto and a background in supportive care research at Sick Kids, Montana beautifully blends the clinical and holistic to support adults and kids recovering from chronic stress and illness. She's a passionate advocate for integrative healing, and her work is making waves in the world of autoimmune and cancer recovery. Enjoy this heart-opening conversation and get ready to learn what it truly means to live unbound, body, mind, and soul. Let's dive in. Hey, Montana. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Carly. It's so amazing to be here. I'm really thrilled.
I'm so happy that we made this happen after years of not seeing each other. I feel like we've all come out of our caves and we're like, I don't know. It was so great to reconnect with you that other day, and I'm glad we're making this happen.
I completely agree. I feel like that world that we all met at the yoga studio, I don't know. I just feels like there was this community that was built, and even though we've all gone in these different directions, it's so fun to like find each other again.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to see communities that, like, when you make those bonds with people and you go through entire trainings and, we weren't together in the same yoga teacher training, but we were part of that community. And I totally resonate with just the idea that, like, yeah, we all came together and then we all kind of scattered out. And I love that we're kind of running into everyone on the streets and stuff like that. It's really fun. And I enjoy being able to like see members of the community and have that kind of spark lit up in you and all those memories come in. It's really great.
Totally. Especially because now that I think about it more, it's like we were going through that really intense self-transformation, or at least I was. And I think everyone that went through that yoga program. And then it's like COVID hit, and that's kind of what scattered us at first, right? And so we've all been through like societal and individual like transformations in different ways, and literally like when you were saying at the beginning, in our own caves. So it is really cool to be reconnected with like, people that are heart-centered, people that you've had those deep connections with.
Yeah, and it feels like we've also all had a chance to like, I mean, maybe some people's journeys are the same, but we had that chance to kind of come in, cocoon. I mean, I came out and I totally rearranged my life. And I feel like that's a story that I hear a lot of, that people took that time, they kind of recalibrated. And then once they were able to, felt like it was time for them to sort of come out of that cocoon and blossom. It feels like everyone's got on these like wild new adventures that maybe are related to what we were doing before, but a lot of times it's like this vastly different new path that they've carved out for themselves.
Totally. I know it's really exciting to see. And it's inspiring because it's hard to be in that cocoon, right? So
it was a little dark. Yeah. So Montana, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and maybe sort of, what your path has been? And I know I've been intertwined into that path and watching you grow, but why don't you give us a little synopsis of where you're at right now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a big question, right?
Where do you start?
Who are you? Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I think many of us find this path, however you want to define the path, of self-improvement, awakening, spiritual development, whatever you want to call it, true internal excavation and rediscovery, right? I found that path, or I was always really on that path because I was quite ill as a child. I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 7. And so when you talk about that cocoon, like I think sort of life sort of, I was in that for a long lot of my life. And I think, and this is a theme that keeps coming back, it's like still with me so strong, of that theme of like seeing what other people are doing, wanting to be part of that world, not quite feeling like I'm part of it, like trying to understand my own internal experience, which was vastly different than most people's, most children's, like thank God, but it's also quite isolating. But and I will say, as I've grown up, I recognize that a lot of people feel that way for different reasons, right? So that's something that I've come to understand. And the gift in that, the gift to be able to sort of be a little bit in the world and out of the world and observing and carving out your own path because you sort of have to, because you don't quite fit in. So yeah, I mean, I think that my physical illness was very much accompanied by mental health struggles, which sounds obvious now, but was not talked about at all and is only really now being understood, like this link between our body and our mind. So that again was another really isolating thing, because not only do I not really understand or know how to interact with my peers because I'm going through a very different experience than them, but also the doctors didn't really understand me. My parents were the most supportive, but they didn't really understand. Like, no one really understood what I was going through and why, when I was declared cured at 10, it actually got worse for me mentally. So I think that literally my entire path can be traced back to that, of like understanding what was actually going on, understanding the connections between mind and body so that we can heal and not just be sort of manage our symptoms, whatever those symptoms are, like whether they're in our relationships or in our physical health or in our income. It's like, we know when something's off and no one else can tell us how, right? So it's really important for us to go on this internal process of excavation and understand ourselves, find others who understand, what we're talking about, and build a new community, because everyone has limitations, right? This is what I've come to understand, is like the medical system isn't bad, it just doesn't know everything, like, and that's the same for all of our systems. And so I think that's why it's exciting that we're creating our own systems and our own communities right now. And this idea of freedom is beautiful, but it's also really important for us to not take that on just ourselves. For me, this process has been one of deep, deep, deep learning and unlearning, but also community, because we can't do it alone.
Hey friends, quick little interruption because I wanted to ask, have you been thinking about starting a podcast but feel totally overwhelmed? Or maybe you already have one, but the editing, scheduling, and posting is a full-time job on its own? I get it. I was a teacher once, juggling everything and craving more freedom. Now I help people around the world launch and manage their podcasts without the stress. So, whether you're dreaming of finally hitting record or you're ready to grow your show into something that actually works for your business, I've got you. Editing, covered. Marketing, yep. Growth strategy, absolutely. It's a done for you solution that's as cozy as your favorite hoodie and as powerful as your story deserves. Head to carlybutlermedia.com to book a call with me today. Let's see if this is a fit, and let's make podcasting feel easy again. Okay, now back to this magical conversation. Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that, like, there is this moment where you think you're completely alone because of this one thing, and that maybe no one can relate to that. But in the end, it turns out everyone's got that thing that they feel prevents them from either, whether it's like finding a community or becoming a part of, or like making friends or establishing these relationships. And it turns out everyone's got this little thing on their shoulder, some more traumatic than others. And there's varying degrees of like what that looks like and how misunderstood you truly feel. And I think it's so cool that you were able to discover that everyone's got that. And I do belong in this spiritual healing world. And it's time for me to carve that space out, because there are going to be people who resonate with your story. And it turns out maybe the community is small, but your story, maybe through like finding this community and raising kind of your voice about it and not allowing fear to take over, then all of a sudden you do start to find people who are like, whoa, I went through that too. I was in that cocoon and I didn't know how to connect with anybody. And oh my gosh, I just can't even imagine what that feels like, even to connect with one person who has been through something like that. And then to understand that, like, okay, if there's one person and you can connect and maybe even share and like enrich each other's lives, what else could you do?
Totally. And I think, I mean, first of all, I have this really pivotal moment of running into a friend, acquaintance in university. So, university, I felt extremely alone. Like, because after the cancer, when I was 17, I was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease right before graduation. And so the doctors gave me medicine and were like, okay, just kind of take this for the rest of your life. And, we don't know what's going to happen. This is a chronic illness. There's no cure, right? So I went to university. But, for me, what I've come to understand is the links between these illnesses and, like I said, mental health. But related to that is our nervous system, right? So if our nervous system is dysregulated, it's going to be really, really hard to heal, right? We're putting our body under extreme stress, and it's not our fault if we're stuck in that. Like, there's reasons, there's traumatic events that kind of wire our system for that. So I'm stuck in this fight or flight. I'm at university. I'm this perfectionist. I'm trying to do well in my grades. I'm in and out of the hospital, incredibly sick, have to go through some surgeries. It was really, really challenging. And I just, from my insider looking out as an outsider, whatever you want to call it, perspective, it was like everyone else is having the time of their life, And I remember running into someone on the street like years after undergrad and being like, oh, hey. And I was like, yeah, undergrad was really hard. He's like, yeah, we were all really struggling. Like, that's why we were drinking so much. Like, do you know what I mean? Not to paint this grim picture, but it just dawned on me like, oh yeah, and I think this is so important in the age of social media, right? Because like me and you, I don't know how I would have survived. I think about this all the time. My childhood with social media, it's so much worse now because what we perceive others are experiencing is so much more heightened because it's not just us looking at them, it's us seeing this like curated version of them. So I think this is a really, really important thing to remember now more than ever is like, this illusion of what you think other people's lives are is it's just so false. And you know that because what do people know about you based on your outer appearance, right? Like, how hard is it for us to express what we're going through on a day-to-day basis, even understand it, let alone express it to other people? So yeah, I mean, I think we all have struggles and that's difficult, but it's also comforting. It's also comforting to remember, oh yeah, like life can be quite challenging and like this is what helps us grow. I would not be working obviously in the field that I'm working in, but I'm continuously looking for community, facilitating community, reaching out for community, like connecting with people, and most people don't do that. And I think the reason I do that is because I always felt like I wanted to connect so bad. So I'm like, okay, if I don't feel like there's a community for me, then I need to seek it. I need to find it. I need to create it. And that impetus is very strong in me. And I really am grateful. I mean, I think it took me a long time. I will say, don't force gratitude, right? Like, it's easy to be like, I'm grateful for my challenges. But there is a point, I think, when you really understand the lessons and when you really understand that, like, I'm still here and what are the things that I've learned, it's immense. It's immense. And I would only have done it if I had to.
Yeah, you hit on so many amazing points there. And it's like that idea of like forced gratitude is such a wild thing. And it really ties into like the whole idea of becoming unbound is that there's no way to just be like, well, I don't think there is. Maybe there's a child out there who's just going to live like an entirely free life and that's going to be that. And they're going to be like, their parents will have set them up for this beautifully free thing and they're never going to be bound by anything. But those moments of darkness, those moments where you feel alone, where you're struggling, where you are in university, just trying to figure out this world while probably, I don't know, for me, maybe for not for everyone, but binge drinking just to like numb. You're like, oh my God, I'm in this world. Like there's all these experiences that we have that then we are able to see, oh, that's where I'm not free. Okay, get over this challenge. Let's go through this. And I think, yeah, in the moment, you're not like, oh, this is fun. Let me feel gratitude for a traumatic event or something that happened. And I don't think that's the way to do it, but you can always look back and have these reflective practices to say, yeah, I went through the crap. I went through the dark, and now I have all this evidence that I can do it. And that, so that the next time a challenge presents itself, I can, maybe you want to freak out in the moment and you are at the behest of your emotions. And then you can be like, wait, I've done this before. I can do this. This is a test. This is a challenge. I've faced all of these other challenges in my life. And through it, I found community somehow. I found out more about myself. And maybe I did become a little bit more free after it. And I think that's a really great perspective to have, to be like, yeah, we're all struggling. We're all going through it and we're all learning. And hopefully you walk away with something with that. And you can be grateful, maybe more closer to the end of it, of whatever that you're going through.
Absolutely. And I think another really difficult one is like, we understand, so I think when I think about freedom, I'm like, okay, what facilitates freedom? And for me, of course, said the yoga teacher, it's presence, right? It's the capacity, like I said, to first of all, to even know that your nervous system is dysregulated, you have to be aware. You have to make contact with that, which is not easy, right? And you have to be able to really listen and understand, like, what are the cues that your body, that your mind is giving you that maybe you've been ignoring, maybe you've been drinking away, or, doing these behaviors that are not shameful. They're completely understandable. But if you want to get out of any sort of cycle, you have to start with presence, which is, I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm going to start meditating or doing yoga and it's going to be this blissful, I'm supposed to relax. And it's like, sometimes it's going to bring up the hardest stuff because it's literally you just letting yourself be still for a moment. So it's not necessarily easy. It's not an easy path, right? But I think that's like the first step. And then it's about finding that alignment, right? Finding alignment within yourself, within your own system, and then finding alignment with others. And also, I think that we can easily get stuck in a victim mentality, right? So it's this really difficult balance. And I think balance and harmony is often what we're finding. It's not black or white, between understanding our challenges and why they've made our nervous system a certain way, made our patterns a certain way, made us understand the world a certain way. We're all acculturated. We're all understand the world through the way that we grow up. And so that can feel like a little bit of a prison. That can feel like, oh, I see that person who, like you're saying, this like theoretical person who's completely unbound and they're raised in the forest and they're running. I mean, first of all, that person, if you've never faced a challenge, you're going to face it. That's going to be its own source of challenge because you're going to have a boss who challenges you. You're going to find someone to challenge you. And if you've never experienced that, you're not going to know what to do. So that's first of all. But second of all, it's very easy for us to fall into victim mentality. And it's not even that that's like wrong logically, it's just not helpful. Like for a lot of my life, I would go to talk therapy, and my dad's a criminal defense lawyer. And I don't know why. I mean, I would treat it like a court case. They'd be like, maybe you're okay. And I'd be like, no. And these are the reasons I'm not. Like, I was so adamant that I was a victim because of things that had happened to me, which all did happen, But that's, the goal is to live a good life. The goal isn't always to be right or to be self-righteous or to rage against the system. Even if you see the flaws in the system, even if you see the flaws in, the parenting style that you were raised with, like everyone came into this world trying their best, figuring it out as they go along. And now it's up to us to like find freedom and find joy. And are we going to find that by living in victim mentality, or are we going to find freedom by like understanding that, recognizing it, making peace with it, finding some sort of forgiveness with that, which is not to like absolve people of, anything that they did that was harmful, or to say, or to be grateful when you don't feel grateful, but it's like a process of reclaiming, because I always say to my clients, to patients, like the word patient literally means passive. Like it comes from the same Latin root. So if we're living in a patient identity, we're always going to feel passive, you know? And me growing up as a patient, like being in hospitals much of my life, I really took that identity on through no one's fault, you know? It was just the way things were. And so for me, freedom is, okay, what does it mean to actually have sovereignty over my body? And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to sometimes take medication or need help, right? That's not what it means. It means that I choose. I really get in touch and I choose what makes sense for me, what resonates for me.
Wow, that is so powerful. There's so many things that I can relate to. The one that popped out in my head, first off, is the word choice around patience and how that relates to the victim mentality. And I think it's super interesting that even, for example, in Toronto, we call the children's hospital sick kids. Like, I feel like that is just so ass backwards that, like, you are literally driving your child who's experiencing symptoms, things that, like, are going on. Maybe it is life-threatening, and you're driving them to a place that's called sick kids. Like, what do you think is going to happen when they enter that building? They're going to be a sick kid. Like it's, and we say it and it's just like, oh, we're going to sick kids. Like, it's just like, to me, that's always been very interesting. And I think it really does feed into the word choice around the victimhood mentality that we use. Like, how else are you going to exist in a sick kids hospital without somehow weaving that into your identity, whether it's on purpose or not, whether it's subconscious or conscious? But then now discovering that, okay, let's bring into presence. What am I? What am I focused on in this present moment? And is there unconscious patterns or words or choices that I'm making that are sticking me inside of these boxes that keep me in victim mentality, that keep me as a patient, that keep me as a sick kid? And how can I not allow that to be my identity? Maybe it's part of me, as it was part of your childhood, as it was part of an adult, like whatever it is, as a parent, like that's part of you. And can it not be your full identity? Because then you have been like, here you go, like, put my handcuffs on. I am shackled to this, and like, we're all set. And sometimes there's comfort in that, right? Like, there's comfort in saying, like, yes, great, I have a label, perfect. I can tell other people, I can know, I can tell doctors, I can tell medical professionals, I can tell my therapist to be like, I'm this. So now you have answers. And instead being like, no, this is part of me. I want to make choices, present aware choices about how we deal with this. And then let's like collectively come up with answers, identities, things that can help that, maybe it does look like some parts of the Western medical situation. And maybe it does look like more spiritual healing of your nervous system and integrating those two so that your identity just isn't a sick kid. It's just a part and you are figuring it all out. So I love that you brought up that piece about victim mentality and the word choices that we use. It's wild.
I think that's really fascinating. I love that.
Can we petition sick kids to change? They're like, you're the perfect person to talk to about it.
I mean, I'm going there to teach some yoga to the staff soon. Maybe I'll let them know. I think that's fascinating. And I think that you hit the nail on the head, and a lot of these things are connected. So we like labels are useful. But I think a lot of times it's exactly what you're saying. It's because we're looking for community. First of all, we're looking for validation. We're looking for people to say, okay, I see you. Like, I see your pain. I understand what you're going through, and therefore I can help you manage it. I can help you come out of it, right? So these identities are useful because, like, it gives us a sense of, like, I'm not being lazy at work. Like, I'm severely depressed. And that's a huge difference. And that's important, right? For us to recognize, like, it's not our fault. And then we can find other people who understand what depression is. That's very different than sadness, right? These words are very overused, but they come with extremely difficult internal experiences. But then then that label starts to like wrap itself around you, and then it's like, okay, but wait, my goal is to live a life of joy, like I said, in freedom. And sometimes we get so enmeshed in our identity that that's actually the trap, right? And so living as a patient, you can't be free, you can't be you can't be unbound, you know, there's all these limitations. And you know, there are certain limitations that I'm gonna, you know, there's certain things that I have to just do and think about that the average person doesn't. But I don't see that as a limitation, I guess, because I understand myself, I understand what I need. We all have certain things that we have to consider, right? I think that's the other thing is, I think in a Western world, we can think of freedom as like extreme self-sufficiency and extreme individualism. But I love this like Taoist harmonious perspective of like, we all have a constitution. We all have a physical body that limits us. You know, that's how we're able to like move around in space and time. So that's okay. Like, we need to honor our limitations. You know, I'm not going to be like a basketball player or whatever. That's great. That allows me to really like pour energy and time into what is true for me, which is honoring the experiences I've had as part of me. But I think the way that we can reframe it is like, what are the parts of you that helped you through that, right? Like, I'm not the cancer, like the cancer experience was part of me, but I am the person who worked through that, right? You are the person who is actively finding ways to manage, to surpass, to overcome, to go on your own hero's journey. And it's just part of your story. But like, where are we really? Because 100%, we are the ones, if we think about where is freedom and what is freedom, like it's mental. So where are you limiting yourself in terms of your own identity structure, right? And you can include whatever identity you want, but like, can it expand a little bit? Can it include a little more?
Yeah, those limitations can often be gifts, right? I love that you said that. Yeah, you're not going to be a basketball player. And I kind of imagine like there's this like whole row of doors in front of you. And like some of them have just been already closed for you. And you could be like angry and mad at like, oh, I wanted to go down that path, but someone already closed that off for me. And it's like, okay, but all those little doors closed. And then this beautiful path got carved for you due to your limitations or your challenges or the thing like those roads and paths. All of a sudden you're like, okay, now I have a narrow focus that I can find purpose in and that I can find my path in. And isn't that a gift that I didn't go try to do something that was outside of my limitations, and instead I focused on my gifts?
100%. I mean, I'm constantly fascinated by our human physiology and like the fact that all of our systems are working together, right? Somehow. We have like, it's literally like, how is this happening, right? We can understand the mechanisms of ourselves, but we still don't really understand how this has all happened. And it's like our liver isn't going to try to be our pancreas. You know, we all have limitations, right? In our body. Our body is such a teacher. It's such a teacher. So it's like, okay, but when they're all working well and when we're aligned and when we feel that something's off for ourselves and when we're able to figure it out and get supports to help it feel aligned, then like we feel good. And we can think about that in our external environment too. I have a friend, she's also like a mentor for me and has helped me a lot in my business. Because she has so many of the skills that I do not have, right? Like for me, I love the education, I love the teaching. I had no experience in business, no experience in any of the other parts of it, and kind of thought of, I think, thought of money as a dirty word, thought of business as a dirty word, and so I had to unlearn a lot of that stuff as well, right? But she said to me, like she said to me, having your own business is like the greatest spiritual journey you'll ever go on. And it's so true. And I'm sure you resonate with this too, because you are faced with every, you know, challenge to your ego, and you have to really be honest with, okay, like you said, if doors are closing, sometimes it's, maybe for some people it's like pounding on a door, and maybe that works. My human design, I'm a projector, so it's like this constant waiting for the invitation. Anytime I try to pound on a door, it just never works. Like for me, it's always about learning even if I think, again, I can think, oh, this is the path for me. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But if doors are closing and there might be a path that you just haven't even noticed that's right there. And when you follow that, it's not necessarily going to look the way you want or you thought, but how can it, right? Especially when you're carving out your own path. You don't know where it's going to lead. That's where, you know, you'll find your way. And it's okay to get that feedback. Like if people aren't resonating with what you're offering, it's a signal, right? And when we get our ego out of the way, which is where a lot of presence, a lot of alignment, a lot of community comes in, then we can really listen to the cues and be honest about where we fit in, you know?
Yeah, that's you nailed it. It was, I think, so much about everything that you just said is exactly, you know, you want to lean into what you're great at. And starting a business, yeah, there's going to be parts of your life that you are not good at. Like there are things that I am so ready to offload in this business to be like, you know what, I'm going to do it for now because I have to, and I'm going to bumble through it. And eventually, this is not a strength of mine. I've identified that. And like, here you go. I'm going to bring someone on to add additional value to this team that all of a sudden allows me to focus on what my path is, my creative outlet, my, you know, zone of genius. Like all of these things are so important. So Montana, I'm wondering, I feel like there's been so many moments where you've described you either overcoming a challenge or being ready to like see things in a new light or a new perspective. Was there a moment for you that like changed kind of everything? I know you talked about going to talk therapy and being a defense lawyer for yourself, and like was there a moment that you were like, yeah, none of this works, I have to try something new?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting that you're asking that question because what pops into my mind is really the time when we met. Like that to me, because so, you know, I'm going through a lot of health struggles and like I'm a huge I have this perfectionist part of me. I have this part of me that thinks if if I perform well, because I was so out of touch with myself and felt so unregulated. But for me, if I was a good student and got that validation, at least I felt, because I was so disconnected from other people and trying to be social and not really understanding how that all works, because, I'm like, I'd like lost my hair when I was 7. There was just a lot of things that were making it really difficult for me to feel like a part of, middle school, which is hard on its own. So, for me, it was like all about validation. It was about grades. It was about, being that smiley, bubbly, helpful older sister and like, little cheerleader for other people. So, that kind of carried on into my work life. And I was like trying different. It's what you're saying about, like I was trying different jobs and it wasn't really working because I would burn myself out and have panic attacks, and my mental health was really challenging. My physical health was really challenging. I kept thinking if I got the right job, if all the parts of my life were set up, if I'm in a relationship and I have a job, then everything's going to be fine. So I got to the point where I had a job that theoretically I would have been perfect at, and I had a relationship that theoretically we would have get married and have kids and whatever. And it felt so wrong in every area of my life that it was just a point where I'm like, okay, I need to really examine what's going on here. Like deep, deep down, what is going on? Because I am not connected with myself. I am fully living for other people. And so that was that process for me of like becoming a yoga teacher, of really, and then recognizing, oh my gosh, like this practice has supported me in ways that I can't even articulate, because it was the rare time in my life where I didn't feel like a patient, because I'm in a yoga class and they're like, I'm connecting with my body in a way that doesn't have to do with illness. And maybe pain is coming up and tension and all that, but it's framed in a very different way. And so that was completely, life-changing for me. And I'm in a room with other people and we don't know what our professions are. We don't know each other's last names. We don't know our income. We're all like sweating and uncomfortable. And like, you know what I mean? It's just such a beautiful community, I think, because of that reason. And so that allowed me to begin this journey of exploration internal that allowed me to uncover the layers. And I mean, there's so many different things that I had to do, and there were so many different parts of my journey. But I think that for me, it was really that like Saturn return era of like the late 20s, early 30s. And it's not, it's a continual process, right? But now I'm able to honestly look at myself when I come back into a pattern. I'm honestly able to understand where my nervous system's at. Am I in alignment with the people I'm working with my relationship, with myself, first and foremost, with my health, and being that bridge? Because the other thing I will say is that sometimes in the wellness world, I feel a little like, okay, I mean, I've gotten into arguments with people before because, you know, there's some people who are sort of extreme on that side where it's like, oh, well, I would never go on chemotherapy because it's poisonous, for example. And I'm like, okay, well, that saved my life. So I can't completely deny our Western medical system. I have to, because of my own life experiences and because of the way that, you know, I've had to sort of work with lots of different modalities, I've had to become that bridge. And so sometimes I don't, again, it's the same feeling as when I was young. I don't fully feel like I resonate with like the Western mode, but then I don't fully feel like I resonate with like the biohacking of like, I am this self-sovereign and I don't need anyone to help me. And my goal is to live forever. And I'm like, I don't know. For me, living forever seems bleak, I guess. Again, I think limitation of having a finite amount of years to live is okay. And like we can accept our humanity. And we can accept our limitations and we can accept help from lots of different areas, right? But it's like, how do I find what's right for myself? And accept that. And sometimes it might be medication. Like I said, you know, I've had surgeries that have limited me. So that's okay. How do I, you know, mourn for that experience, recognize that it's given me gifts, and recognize that maybe a lot of that stuff would have been avoided if I knew how to regulate my system, but I didn't at 17, right? And I'm continuing to. So I think that moment comes again and again and again, that wake up call of something is off. I haven't been listening to myself. And that's okay. And where can I come back? Where can I come back to alignment in my physical body, and where can I find alignment with the systems around me? Because it's not going to be static, because we're always growing, right? So things are always going to be changing, and that's okay, and that's beautiful. And so how do I continuously find harmony in all the different areas of my life?
I love that you said that it's not a moment. I mean, maybe there's multiple moments in your life where you got to sort of pause, take a deep breath, look around you and be like, oh, whoa, this is like not in alignment with what my body needs, my nervous system. And I think there are those moments where it is, whether it's in a meditation class or a yoga class, or it's in a new practice that you're developing, whether it's breath work, like none of this stuff is easy. It's not meant to be easy, but it does bring up those things when you can go silent and just start to like be like, oh, my body feels off here, here, and here. And then your mind is like, well, yeah, it could be this, this, and this, but like listening to the beautiful intuition of your body, going through the work, being able to sit in the mud and be like, yeah, I'm not in alignment right now. And you know what? In 5 years from now, there's going to be another moment where I'm not in alignment, and I'm going to have to make shifts and changes. And so there's this beautiful collection of moments where we can understand that we are not free, and then sort of start to open maybe some more doors about like, okay, maybe it is time to start introducing, you know, whether it's new practices or whether it's a new style of therapy for the physical body. And I love what you said about like, you don't quite fit into the biohacking, or you don't quite have full faith in like the Western medical situation. And I think that that's a really beautiful place to be, because I think a lot of us are like, yeah, like if I break my arm, I'm going to have to do something about this. I like I was a camp counselor and I ran my own camp. It was a beautiful thing. And I had all my homeopaths for bee stings and things like that. If kids were feeling sick, I had all of those things. I had a whole cart of them, and I had an EpiPen, because in those two situations, I'm going to have to be aware and be like, okay, what's best for this? And it's going to be part of this, and it's going to be a little bit of that. And yeah, maybe it is just a couple deep breaths, but maybe it is a homeopathic medicine, and maybe it is an EpiPen, where, because, we didn't know that this was going to come up. And so there's beautiful parts of taking all of that information, all of that knowledge that you've learned through your lived experience, and nobody can tell you that that's wrong, or that's, you shouldn't have done that. It's harmful for your whole body, and it doesn't do the right things, where it's like, okay, my lived experience tells me that that was the thing that has me here today.
I love that. I love the kit for the bee sting with all the natural and the EpiPen. That's so perfect. That's so perfect. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's okay to have it all, and to, again, use your own lived experience as a way to feel what's right for you. I think that this is especially important. I mean, because I work with a lot of people that are going through cancer treatment and autoimmune disease. So first of all, autoimmune disease affects women much more than men. Autoimmune and cancer rates are rising. So that's like the bad news. And so I think that this is where, again, like my lived experience, I'm realizing, oh my gosh, like I felt so, like we were saying before, I felt so alone at that time. And unfortunately, like more and more people, again, because I'm getting older and because my lived experience is growing, my network is growing, I'm able to work with a lot of different clients and realize that like these issues and these experiences are unfortunately shared by many, many people. And I think there's a link between women, especially, and I'm not saying that men don't have their own, and, there's also a binary. I'm totally understanding that too. But I will say, I think there's a specific feminine thing, this specific thing that a lot of women can relate to, of like suppressing our own needs, being kind of trained and taught to put on a happy face. There's a link between that and our body starting to fight itself, our immune system starting to attack itself, right? So it is a wake-up call, right? And it is really important for those of us who have these experiences to, I don't have a choice. Like if I don't listen to my body, it gets really gnarly, but that's okay. That's good. That's kind of, like I said before, that's forced me. I see so many people who are clearly living in lives that they do not, that are not in alignment, but they're okay with it. You know what I mean? Like their body hasn't fought enough against it. They haven't had the big enough wake-up call. And that's kind of what a midlife crisis is, right? So we're going to get a wake-up call sooner or later if we're not living in alignment. And like, how long do we want to live in not in alignment? So for me, I don't have much time. Like it's just the way that my body is running. And that's, I've learned to see that as a gift, right? And so if you are struggling with your physical health, or a mental health, right? It is a really important indication of saying, okay, like, where am I letting myself slow down? Am I letting myself find joy? Do I have a supportive community around me? Am I telling myself these stories about that I have to do too much? Because when I started my yoga practice, for example, it was like push as hard as you can, right? Because that's how I was operating in all the different areas of my life. And so you have this little window of time and space where you're like, okay, why am I pushing myself so much? Like, why don't I try restorative yoga? What is so threatening to me about lying down for an hour? Okay, there's an indication there. Maybe that's partly what's going on in the rest of my life and why my immune system has decided to attack itself. Of other reasons, right? It's not just one thing or another. So I think when we have these symptoms, they are just symptoms. They are symptoms of a bigger picture that we really need to look inwards. And again, that's not going to be easy. Like it's really going to be challenging to be honest with ourselves. And it's important for us to find the right people around us. And I think that's where I've kind of carved my niche, where, you know, you can go to talk therapy and you can go to your doctors and you can go to all these different things, but so much of our trauma and our experiences are stored in our body. And so for me, it's working with folks on the somatic sense, in the embodied sense, because our mind is connected to our body, our gut is connected to our brain, right? It's all together. And so where are we carrying this physically? And what can we learn from that? I shared a hospital bed, actually. So when I was getting pretty significant surgery in my early 20s, it was very terrifying and very painful. And I happened to be sharing a hospital room with this woman who actually is a naturopath. So that was another reminder, oh, okay, like even people who understand herbs and understand their connection to the earth and understand this natural way of living, they also, you know, I didn't fail because I had to get these surgeries. And I literally think of her as an angel. I still see her sometimes. And she said to me, because both of us had this surgery called a total colectomy, where colon had to be surgically removed, and we have this thing called a J pouch, which is an internal colon. And she said to me, Montana, like, we don't have colons anymore. We cannot put up with shit. Like, we cannot put up with bullshit from anyone anymore. We don't have the capacity to hold any bullshit, whether internal, external. And I love that. And I keep coming back to that, right? Of like, I don't have the capacity literally to put up with bullshit from myself, from other people. And it, you know, I get tired more often than most people. Like, I do. I have physical limitations. Even I've had to realize time and time again, like, even though, you know, I had cancer when I was 7, it was in remission when I was 10, I was declared cured. Part of the reason I faced so many mental health difficulties was I'm like, but I feel there's something that feels in not alignment. I feel like that experience was something that had lasting effects, and those effects were never acknowledged. And that's the thing that kept me out of freedom, right? It wasn't the experiences in themselves. If I integrate that and I say, okay, that experience has changed my body in a way. If I make peace with that, if I make peace with the things I've been through physically, then I can allow myself to go to restorative yoga. Then I can allow myself to work hours that work for me, that might be quite different than what works for someone else. You know, that's okay. Again, we cannot just live in this paradigm of what we think works for other people, because a lot of people find a 9-to-5 challenging. A lot of people don't resonate with whatever a normal life looks like, right? And so when you acknowledge that, then you can be a voice for other people to say, oh, it's okay to rest. Oh, it's okay to find my own rhythms. Oh, I'm a woman and I don't really feel like I resonate in this sort of patriarchal way that work has been designed, because of course it has, right? And oh, men also don't really love that system either. So how do we create a new system when we can't even, you know, when we feel shame for not fitting into that system?
That's incredible insight. And I think it's a beautiful way to look at, like, yeah, there is going to be times when you don't, like, when the hustle culture doesn't work for you anymore. And to be very honest, I don't think it works for anybody truly. But I mean, people might say, like, oh, but it does work for me. And there might be a season of life where it does work for you, and that is that. And I think this hustle culture, especially not as a female, like, as soon as I realized, like, I was like, I'm not working a 9 to 5, I'm working an 8 to 4. And yeah, I get my summers off, but it's still Monday to Friday. I'm still in this wheel, and I can feel in my body that my stomach hurts when I go to work every morning. Like, maybe what would happen if I listened to that? What would happen if I did slow down? I remember one time at the studio, I was in a restorative class. It turned out to be one of my favorite classes, but I'd be like rushing to get to class to like get there to relax. And at the end of class, I don't remember who it was, and they looked at me and they were like, wow, you really like relaxing. And in that moment, I was so offended. I was like, oh, Me, I don't like relaxing. And I was like, but yeah, this is my favorite class that I always love coming to. And it was that moment where I was like, oh yeah, maybe I do like to relax. Oh yeah, maybe it's okay if I relax. Maybe, like hot vinyasa is not my jam. Maybe restorative yin yoga is my jam. And then it turned out that that was my favorite class to teach. And I loved it. And like, even though it's not necessarily a regular studio practice for me, like setting up a relaxation like yin posture or restorative posture in my living room is so good. And it's so interesting to be like, that was kind of that moment where I was like, yeah, I don't have to be rushing to get here. And then everything else unraveled of slowing down, of listening to my body, my feminine body. It's okay that it's a feminine body and it needs a different rhythm than, the other half of the world. And I think what you said is just beautiful. Like, you recognize your limitations, you understand where your energy is at, and you can understand that like that's going to be your gift to be like, I'm going to listen to my body, and maybe someone else will watch me listen to my body, see that it frees me, and maybe they could do the same thing.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I mean, it's just so funny, right? That we have to like learn to rest, and that it's just the most intrinsic thing when you look at a child. Like, they know when they're full of energy. Like, as a teacher, you are very aware of this. Like, children know how they feel. And they are attuned to that, and we lose it along the way, but like, we can always come back to it. Our body is always telling us, we're just not necessarily listening, right? It's so beautiful that we live in these cycles. It's so beautiful that we have a sense of this, right? And and it's not always easily articulated. And I think that's something that's this beautiful dance between like the feminine and the masculine. When I say it energetically, right? It's just that there's two ways, or when you think of that polarity we all have within us of seeing the world. It's like, what's the balance between action and reception? What's the balance between, making initiative and taking a step back? And like you said, there's the seasonal aspect as well, right? It's spring right now, and it's beautiful that we're talking about freedom, because we're in the Jewish holiday of Passover, which is all about freedom. And so it is like this question of like, what actually makes us free? And part of what makes us free is recognizing this is the greater world that we live in. This is the season that I'm in. This is the season that I'm in physically in the world. This is the season I'm in internally, and aligning with that, right? Really finding that true alignment with your body, with your vessel, within the greater world. I'm so excited about spring and for getting out in nature, because when I'm out in nature, like, it automatically just makes me feel much more regulated, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm part of this. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to say anything. We learn so much from listening. I love that you were like listening to your stomach as a way to be like, maybe something's off here. And sometimes I ask my clients to write letters to their organs, right? Like, what is your heart telling you? What is your stomach telling you? What do you want to say to it? What does it want to say to you? And then we can think of the same thing of like, what is this tree trying to communicate to me, or actually communicating to me, right? And that's the other thing about community. Like, community can be the flowers in your house. For me, much of my life, community was books I was reading that were inspiring me, podcasts I was listening to that were inspiring me. So I think that's another thing about freedom. We have access to so much right now, which is really exciting, because it allows us to expand our awareness and to find community and to find alignment in so many different areas, and to just like follow our passions, but then always remember, like, as far as you go out, to come back inward.
I love that. So if you could give your, whether it's 7-year-old self, early 20s-year-old self, or someone who is also feeling stuck or in the dark, what would you suggest as their first baby step to begin unbinding themselves from these cages that they find themselves in?
The first thing that pops to mind is I think that for much of my life, I thought I was the problem. Like, I had some, like I said, when I was a defense lawyer, I mean, it really felt like I had some sort of physical, mental limitation that was my fault. I felt like I had somehow either done something wrong or was given something wrong, or there was something very wrong with me that was my fault. That's how I felt. I felt a great sense of shame. And I think the thing that's really important to understand is whatever you're feeling, like there is a greater intelligence and there's a reason. There is a reason that you feel this way, you know? And it's not your fault that you feel this way. We are all connected to greater systems that we are enmeshed in. We are all connected to family systems. We are all connected to physical bodies. We are all connected to, so we're not out of the, we're in a womb. We come out. We're literally still part of our mom. Like we're never an individual that sort of is meant to just create our life from the get-go. We're not a clean slate. We come in with epigenetics, with genetics, with stories, with a history, with a city, with a culture, with a historical period, right? And all these things are affecting us. And that's not to, again, make us feel like a victim to all of it, but it's to say, okay, I can actually understand why all of these things happened so that I can take, like you said, to take that first baby step is to accept yourself, and to have self-compassion. And that's very different from victim mentality. To be like, I am so sad that I had to go through that as a 7-year-old. That must have been really challenging, And now I'm an adult. Now I have autonomy and sovereignty over where I spend my time and what I feed my mind and what I feed my body. And I have this agency now that I didn't want then. But even then, whatever time you find yourself, once you're aware of this, once you find this sense of self-worth and self-compassion, it's like all of these doors start to open because there's a lot of energy to blame yourself, or to blame others. Blame in general is extremely time-consuming and energy-consuming. So I would say try to release any sort of blame, whether internal or external, so that we can move past whatever's limiting us.
I love that, letting go of blame and maybe just having a touch of grace for yourself. And I think it's beautiful now that looking back, and whether you're in this moment, it's like, can you nurture yourself? And then when you reflect, can you in your mind nurture that 7-year-old that went through that and understand that it wasn't her fault? And maybe in a moment of something, you can be like, okay, if I was a friend, how would I take care of myself in this moment? How would I give myself grace? How would my best friend, my partner, a family member talk to me and nurture me? And can I do that for myself? That's beautiful.
Absolutely. And that helps us find that community, right? Because if it's like, oh, this is the way that I would talk to myself if I was my friend, but maybe my friends aren't really talking to me like that, or maybe my partner isn't. And then that's where you find that the alignment as well, right? If the alignment's there or if it's off. To really understand, oh, what do I need in this moment? Sometimes it's about telling people, right? Sometimes last night I told my partner, I'm like, I don't need you to fix what I'm telling you right now, right? I just need you to listen. So the more we understand what we need, the more we can find that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Montana, for all those little baby steps and golden nuggets. So where can people check you out and connect with you?
Yeah. So people can connect with me at my website, montanaskurka.com, or online at Montana Skurka. So I'm sure all of that will be, available for them. And I would love, I do a lot of classes, a lot of one-on-one treatments and workshops and yoga in the park. And there's a lot of fun stuff coming up. So definitely stay in touch. And I would love to hear from you. It's always really wonderful and helpful to hear from other people about their experience if they do resonate. So I would, please be in touch.
All right. Will do. We'll put it all in the show notes if people want to connect and reach out and make those community connections, because we're all going through something, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Montana. Have a
Thank
beautiful rest of your
you.
day.
You
And
too.
next time, maybe we will put together our in-person podcast, because I feel like we could talk just forever. This was so great.
100%. I hope we can do it again soon, and in person would be amazing.
Amazing. Thanks, Montana.
Thank you.
Wow, what a beautiful, expansive conversation. Huge thank you to Montana for sharing her heart, her healing journey, and her powerful perspective on what it means to truly integrate mind, body, soul in recovery. Her work is such a gift to anyone navigating chronic stress, illness, or just feeling the weight of the world on their nervous system. And thank you for tuning in and being a part of this Unbound movement. If this episode lit a spark or brought some peace to your day, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. It helps me grow and it helps keep this show going. All right, friends, we'll see you on the next episode of Becoming Unbound.